Moriocho Radio. Your host, once again, is me, your neighbor, Quad Cup. This video was supposed to cover 3 parts, but after finishing out the script, I can only cover parts 4 for this video. Stands. Everyone knows them. Stands in JoJo's is a vast and ambiguous power system in anime, where pretty much any concept you could think of is probably a fight within the series. A sniper rat, skipping time, meteors, Gojo's infinity. JoJo's has it all. Although stands are so vast and unique, sometimes they can be eerily similar, but still stand out as different. For example, take Stone Ocean's arsonist, Guess, and La Squadra member, Formaggio, as both possess stands that shrink the enemy. Goo Goo Dolls and Little Feet may share a similar gimmick, but Goo Goo Dolls relies on the user to be close to the enemy, whereas Little Feet activates based on cuts. And not to mention, both users are entirely different people, and their purpose for shrinking is entirely different, making them unique to their respective bizarre parts. Guess just wants a pet/friend to trust so she can break out, while Formaggio wants to extort information out of Narancia, and he's also a member of the Mafia. What is interesting, however, is when stands were introduced, it was originally brought up to be connected under a common theme. Inside Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, it is spelled out to you that the central theme of the stands are the tarot cards and the gods of Egypt.
運命のカード、タロットだ。絵を見ずに無造作に1枚引いて決める。これは君の運命の暗示でもあり、スタンドの能力の暗示でもある。Both Dio's the World and Jotaro's Star Platinum share the same bases under a tarot card. Egyptian gods like Horus and Anubis are also stands, and their functions revolve around what that god represents. Stardust Crusaders is the only part where this common theme is crystal clear and outright stated to be the case. Every part onward shifts to purely musical references. What I was curious about was what if there was a common theme within the other parts, despite being modeled after Rocky's playlist? Is it possible that Killer Queen and Crazy Diamond share a similar founding base? And this video is my findings. Before we begin, I wanted to thank those who have watched my Phantom Blood video. As it was a video I took a risk making, I thoroughly enjoyed the creation and research of that video, but I was unsure how well it'd do or be received. I'm currently reading the Part 2 manga as I am working on this video, so I look forward to making one for Battle Tendency really soon, and I'd love to continue it as a series on the channel. Obviously this video is purely speculation, and your interpretations may very well be different from mine. But with that being said, let's begin. With Part 4, I played around with multiple ideas for the theme, such as forensics and justice. But there was a remainder of stands like Pearl Jam that didn't quite fit into that description, unless you count like culinary crimes. But I ultimately landed on community, as it embodies both forensics and justice, since the community is responsible for delivering justice, and police are a part of the community. Community is a major theme in Part 4, as the main villain is an uncaught serial killer who has been killing people for 16 years, and it is up to Josuke and the group to hunt down said killer and finally bring peace to Morio, because stand users are way above the police pay grade. Now let's talk about the individual stands of Part 4 and how they relate to the core aspects of the theme, community. Josuke Higashikata. Josuke as a person is incredibly empathetic towards other people, and he strives for justice and peace, and you can tell this because it's literally baked into his character design. Love and peace is literally embedded on Josuke's jacket. As you know, Josuke's backstory begins during the events of Part 3, Stardust Crusaders. Josuke, just like Holly, was under a deadly fever because he was around 4 years old and could not control his manifested stand. Obviously, no one around him at the time would have known what a stand is, so Josuke's mom rushed him to a hospital during the heavy blizzard. They end up getting stuck in the snow, and as Josuke's mom, Tomoko, was reveling in what was happening, a stranger, donning the outfit of a Japanese high school student, appears out of nowhere, and out of the kindness of his heart, he chooses to help, despite it being none of his business. This stranger remained anonymous, but his decision to help left a mark on Josuke. Who knows, maybe it was even the modern vessel that Ryu Ishigori reincarnated into. And Josuke now strives to share the stranger's compassion. Not to mention, because Josuke's biological father was Joseph Joestar,
and Joseph Joestar was never around, he was raised by Tomoko's father, Ryohei, who was Morio's policeman for 35 years. Both these aspects instilled a strong sense of justice in Josuke, and that is the reason why his stand literally fixes damage to what it was once before. The only things Crazy Diamond can't fix is his own injuries and the dead, meaning Josuke and Crazy Diamond live and breathe helping the community of Morio. Okuyasu is a curious case, as he originally starts off as an adversary, but ends up becoming Josuke's main Jobro. And even though Okuyasu is not the sharpest tool in the shed, often relying on his brother Keicho to do all the thinking for him, both Keicho and Okuyasu are fueled by the desire to find a stand that can fix their dad, even though their dad was not a good father in the slightest. At least of what they remembered. Because he's simple-minded, he is used as an enforcer by his own brother. Okuyasu demonstrates compassion frequently. For starters, his stand, the hand, the Hando, erases anything. But Okuyasu never really uses the hand to kill anybody. He only uses it to try and kill Red Hot Chili Pepper, but given what he did, it was deserved. And in his initial encounter with Josuke, after he gets beat up a little, so he was in more of an enraged state. He was incapacitated by most of the final showdown, otherwise he would have tried to swipe Kira as well. It's admirable that despite being an incredibly powerful stand, Okuyasu chooses to only wield it for battle advantage, swiping the air to bring the target closer, over outright murder. I should also note that in their goal to find a stand user suitable to take out their father, Okuyasu knows that he has the power to do it, but because he doesn't know where things end up when he scrapes away time, he chooses to not use it on his dad, because he doesn't know what fate awaits him. After the loss of Keicho, Okuyasu quickly forms camaraderie with Josuke, which ultimately allows him to move on from the past and transform himself into a loyal, protective best friend. And of course, he then becomes a vital member of the community of Morio. It's Okuyasu's choice of forming a relationship with Josuke that helps him grow out of his brother's clutches and into his own independent person. Koichi. He's just a reliable guy. No, but seriously, Koichi has always been a straight arrow, who is timid, short, and smart. Basically the exact opposite characteristics of Okuyasu. Koichi receives the evolutionary stand, Echoes, which evolves as he does throughout Part 4. As Koichi's stand evolves, so does his character, as he becomes independent, and chooses to act despite the fears he has in an encounter. Echoes Act 1 is exclusively sound-based, which is symbolic to Koichi starting to speak up for himself. Then progresses to sounds having physical consequences on the world around him, for Act 2. Lastly, the stand peaks at Act 3, where it is basically its own individual person, capable of independent thought. All this happens because of his relationship with Josuke, which emphasizes how community can be crucial to personal growth.
Okay, master. Let's kill the whole beach!
Rohan Kishibe. Even as the world is rapidly progressing at a frightening pace, he keeps up with it with a slight sweat writing his manga. His stand, Heaven's Door, is honestly one of the most broken abilities in JoJo's. Heaven's Door obviously stems from his obsession with manga and his selfish nature, literally giving him the ability to read people's entire lives, steal their memories, and alter their psychology.
Heaven's Door! Remove his ability to talk!
Rohan is also stubborn, and this makes him into a villain for a small duration of Part 4, only being defeated by Josuke's blind rage when he insulted his hair. Rohan is not necessarily evil, just someone really passionate about manga, and he also just comes off the wrong way. When Rohan and Koichi end up meeting with the ghost, Reimi Sugimoto, who informs them of the true evil lurking within Morio, Rohan comes to realize that Reimi Sugimoto, the first victim of Kira, or rather, the first target of Kira, actually gave up her life to save him. Rohan vows to find Kira at all costs, conflicting with his selfish nature. Rohan has a superiority complex, but has demonstrated being able to give respect to people who show genuine kindness or courage. He's often seen hanging out with Koichi. After his introduction, Kishibe doesn't try and selfishly steal memories anymore. Instead, is devoted to using his stand as a defense mechanism. Rohan does not like Josuke, as their characters completely clash with each other, but they work together well. When things get down to it, they can put aside their differences and work together. I'll keep these next two very brief because their characters are already fleshed out in parts 2 and 3. But anyway, Jotaro and Joseph both come to Morio to assist with the rampant outbreak of stand users, particularly trying to obtain the bow and arrow. And even though their stands, as we mentioned, stem from the tarot cards, their characters and role in part 4 are entirely to help out the community of Morio, as both of them know what happens firsthand, what happens when an enemy or villain possesses a stand and the damage it could cause. Now, every community needs a support structure. Communities naturally have services that provide for their members. Morio has a lot of service workers and people who are ultimately doing good work for the economy of Morio. You could also include Rohan Kishibe in this category as well. Tonio Trussardi. Chef Tony came to Morio from Napoli, Italy, and he makes Gordon Ramsay look like a total amateur. Chef Tony is a chef with the stand ability Pearl Jam, which infests his food with powers to literally heal their ailments. Chef Tony can cure fatigue, illness, diarrhea, etc., maybe even cancer, who knows. Tonio is originally painted as a possible villain of this episode, but it's ultimately just paranoia, as Tony is just a dedicated chef trying to help people.
Oh no! Wash your disgusting hands with soap this instant! Cleanliness in the kitchen is priority 1, amico mio!
Wait, wash my hands?
Every community needs a chef like Tonio Trussardi. Aya Tsuji. Just like Tony, Aya is originally painted as a villain, but she is just someone who seeks to make people happy through beauty. Aya practices cosmetology, and wields her stand, Cinderella, to physically alter people's appearances and fingerprints. But to uphold the transformation, customers have to follow specific instructions. But what happens to those who ignore her instructions is simply just not a concern to Aya.
正解は全部違うだわ。その中にあなたの顔は一つもない。全部違うと見抜いた時だけ直してあげる。
So, although her stand is meant to help people in Morio by enhancing their beauty, it also ends up working against Morio, because Yoshikage Kira takes note of her salon and makes it a backup plan in case he ever needed it, which, surprise surprise, ends up being the case. So just as she intended to help the community through her stand, her abilities also end up giving a serial killer another chance at life, which showcases the duality of these community services. Shigekiyo. I attribute Shigekiyo to Morio as I do crows to an ecosystem. He and his stand Harvest ultimately give back to Morio by recirculating lost change into the economy, among other stuff. Instead of being a crow, Shigekiyo is a middle schooler who struggled to make friends. This is why his stand Harvest is so bountiful, resembling his desire to have friends, or a community, if you will. Shigekiyo is obviously young, and he is vulnerable to materialism or greed. He uses Harvest to gather loose coins, which makes him encounter Josuke and Okuyasu, which they give him a smarter use of his powers by collecting stamps and lottery tickets. Josuke and Okuyasu work with Shigekiyo to make a shit ton of cash and split it 3 ways. This relationship is described as mutualism, where everyone in the exchange nets something positive. You help me and I help you. By combining their strengths, they can net millions of dollars. Although, Shigekiyo, being the middle schooler he is, develops a blind greed to the earnings he made with Josuke and Okuyasu. The conflict eventually does get resolved, but later, Shigekiyo unwittingly encounters Yoshikage Kira, under a misconception.
私の名はキラヨシカゲ、年齢33歳。自宅は森王町北東部の別荘地帯にあり、結婚はしていない。
Try as he might, Shigekiyo in his stand Harvest was quickly overpowered by Kira, and in a heartbreaking display, is forced to use the last of his stand to warn Josuke about Kira. Seriously though, these high school girls don't get slandered nearly enough.
どっか悪いんじゃないの？この子中等部の子よ。なんか変よこの子。 先生呼んでこようよ。いや、ほっときなよ、気持ち悪い。行こう行こう。
Going from a pot of greed to a hero, through a last-ditch effort, would not have been possible if Shigekiyo never met Josuke. Through finding genuine friends, Shigekiyo's sacrifice ultimately puts Kira's fate into motion, by granting Josuke the button of the mysterious uncaught serial killer of 16 years. However, a community is not entirely made up of good people, and such individuals are what our rogue gallery embody. Although, many of the enemy standards do end up as allies, but that is more of a testament to how important a community is in reforming these people for the better. Yukako is a relatively normal high school girl who develops an obsession with Koichi. Her stan love Deluxe represents her clingy and obsessive nature, where she wields her hair to grab and manipulate people. She takes things too far with Koichi though, even kidnapping him and forcing him to manicure himself to her ideal man. Granted, it was only like this because Koichi purposely made himself look terrible, trying to listen to Josuke and Okuyasu's advice. But anyways, Koichi eventually defeats her, and they don't interact until the Cinderella arc. In the Cinderella arc, enough time has passed between her and Koichi to where Yukako wants Koichi to love her again, but knows of the obvious challenges. She utilizes Aya's beauty salon to charm Koichi once again, but this backfires as she is unable to maintain Cinderella's conditions. Because she failed the conditions, Yukako's face began to disintegrate to an emotionless husk, forcing her to become distant from Koichi. This prompts Koichi to seek out Yukako and confronts Aya about fixing her. In a test pretty much structured like the Holy Grail in Indiana Jones, but there's no correct answer, Koichi must locate Yukako's true face to save Yukako from being blinded permanently. Koichi was overwhelmed by the choices, so he offers his own eyes for being blinded. But this action wins over Aya, and she then dismisses the test entirely. Both Yukako and Koichi are successfully able to move on from the past, and can form a genuine relationship. When Yukako isn't trying to wield her stand to extort people or force people to do her bidding, she's able to actually form a genuine connection with Koichi. Yuya Fungami. His stan Highway Star manifests after his motorcycle accident. Yuya is an adrenaline junkie and loves to go fast. Highway Star is a pursuit stan, and this means that it chases down the target with a speed of 60 kilometers per hour, which 60 kilometers per hour was what he went during his accident, but it also has an incredible sense of smell to track. However, with stans being a manifestation of the soul, the incredible sense of smell bleeds over into Yuya. Yuya now can sense rotting food, hormones, like for emotions and stuff, and individual people even if they are in a crowd.
If my nose is correct, one of you beauties is on your period. I'm right, aren't I? Who is it?
It's me. That full-bodied odor you're whiffing is courtesy of yours truly, you dick! That's bullshit!
He's basically like a dog now, and he initially uses his stand to siphon nutrients from victims to heal his injuries at the hospital. However, he gets his ass beat by Josuke, and ends up at the hospital for a prolonged time.
一旦おめえを直せばよ。これで全然卑怯じゃねえわけだな。
However, during the Enigma mini-arc, Koichi is captured by Enigma. Then Josuke forces Yuya to reluctantly team up with him to help track Koichi down and save him. The stan Enigma then captures Josuke too, which gives Yuya the ultimatum of continuing or flee and pretend he never saw anything. He could have just walked away with his 3 nurses no problem whatsoever. However, despite being Josuke's prisoner and getting his ass beat by him in the past, Yuya ultimately chooses to remain loyal. He had no business with Enigma whatsoever, but still decided to fight him anyways. He ends up having to sacrifice himself, but in the process he frees Josuke from his paper trap. This ends up saving the day, and his character arc comes full circle. He reminds me of a mirror of Aya's stand. Whereas Aya's stand is a tool meant for good but gets used for evil later, Yuya's stand is a tool meant for evil but ends up being used for good later. Also, what's important to note is he also vowed to never use Highway Star to siphon nutrients from people again. With his heightened sense of smell alone, that can be used to help find missing people in the community of Morio. However, it would have never been thought of using it this way if it weren't for him meeting Josuke in the hospital and getting his ass beat. Keicho Nijimura was someone I didn't quite know where to put on this list, but I think he fits here. As you know, he's the brother of Okuyasu, and he is the brain of the Nijimura brothers. Initially an antagonist, he meets Josuke after shooting Koichi with an arrow, and he has been making stand users to find a suitable candidate to put their dad out of his misery. Koichi was just another target for his goal. Keicho's stand, Bad Company, is a military force with helicopters, missiles, guns, troops, etc., the whole deal. And it represents his cold, calculated, controlling nature, as both a brother and a person. As we mentioned before, the dad was not the world's greatest father and was more of a terrible person for a majority of his children's lives. It's because of this rough childhood that Keicho enacts a strict discipline and is manifested as a military officer for his stand. The community Keicho had was his father and his brother, since their mom died of an illness early on. If Mr. Nijimura wasn't so much of a bad father, Keicho and his fate would have been so much different. Sadly though, Keicho represents the people and communities with rough upbringings, because not everyone gets a happy ending, nor a proper chance, like his brother did. Right as Keicho and Josuke reached an understanding, or about to be, he is murdered by Red Hot Chili Pepper, who was in pursuit of the arrow. Keicho was not the best person, nor brother, but it was not necessarily his fault. It was due to his upbringing, and all he needed to be successful was a better community around him, which he only caught a short glimpse of with Josuke. Tamami Kobayashi. The swindler, Tamami Kobayashi, in his stand, The Lock, weaponizes people's guilt against them. By emotionally manipulating people, Tamami forces people to repay debts to him, debts that should never have been owed in the first place. He's a classic con man. Tamami represents those in the community looking for a quick buck, so like that guy in 2021 trying to get you to buy an NFT or something. Although not as evil as a serial killer with a hand fetish, people like Tamami are everywhere, and embedded in all sorts of communities, willing to throw away morals for money. Tamami's stand does not serve a good purpose, but he ends up not using it after losing his fight with Koichi. Instead, Tamami becomes a minor ally for the main cast and even uses his stand to test the fairness of Josuke and Rohan's dice game. Guys like Tamami aren't necessarily evil, but extremely apathetic to people, and his stand embodies this perfectly. Sometimes they just need a little reality check to be kept in line. Toshikazu Hazamada. Hazamada is very envious and is a social outcast of Morio. However, Hazamada has clear aspirations of not being an outcast. Hazamada harbors a special hatred of successful and popular people, like Josuke, and his stand Surface reflects his inner desire to be like the people he hates/envies. Surface is a mimicry stand, taking the form and forcing movements of his target of choice, kinda like a voodoo doll. His first seen use of Surface was on his own best friend, who he forced to gouge out his own eye with a mechanical pencil, all over a petty argument. He uses his stand on Josuke to try and target Jotaro, because he was manipulated by Chili Pepper. Toshikazu Hazamada and his stand represent the outcast of a community, how they are prone to harboring hatred and showing jealousy of accepted people in society. He has some screws loose, but at the end of the day, all he wants is acceptance, and to be treated normally, which he sort of receives in Rohan Kishibe's introduction. After his initial episode, he doesn't use his stand for envy anymore.
キラークイーン第3の爆弾バイサーダストやったぞ発動したぞ
Just before we talk about Josuke and the core group, let's talk about Yoshikage Kira and the villains of the community. At worst, a community may harbor an individual, like Kira, who is beyond redemption, and needs active effort from the people in order to stop for good. Otherwise, a community can host other problematic figures that choose to harm others for their own personal gain. Speaking of which, Yoshikage Kira, someone who just wants to live a quiet, peaceful life in Morio, but also wants to kill people, with explosions, and keep their hands as a temporary prize, because it's deeply rooted in a hand fetish unlocked by the Mona Lisa. He's just a good and normal guy, never smokes, rarely drinks, kills a middle schooler, and goes to bed by 11 p.m. and begins his day anew like nothing happened. On the real, Kira represents the absolute worst in a community, someone who hunts people within his own community. His stand, Killer Queen, serves to basically vaporize and eliminate any trace of evidence of Kira's crime. With a touch, Kira has the ability to turn anything/anyone into a bomb and detonate it at will. Kira is a serial killer, so an ability like that allows him to continue what he's been doing with basically no trace. Not to mention, it contrasts his goal, where he wants to live a quiet life but can't help but make a big explosion in the community.
The hell you think you're doing, skis? You can't come in here. Get out of my apartment!
Kira acquired his stand sometime after the first victim, Reimi Sugimoto, who he killed with a knife gashed in her back, along with the dog Arnold. Which is probably why their ghosts are intact and everyone else joins the void. But Kira has two sub-stand abilities during his time in Part 4. The first is sheer heart attack, and of course, sheer heart attack is a pursuit stand attack, serving as bomb type 2. And this bomb targets body heat, then explodes on contact, basically like a heat-seeking missile. Sheer heart attack cannot be reasoned with, and is basically invincible. One can interpret this ability as a representation of Kira's sheer determination and tunnel vision for his chosen victims. And neither can his third ability. Killer Queen's third bomb, Bites the Dust, is a landmine he puts on time itself, and when triggered, it rewinds time by 1 hour. It can only be placed on non-stand users, and it triggers when anyone asks said non-stand user anything that puts Yoshikage Kira at risk of being caught. If anyone triggers Bites the Dust, the bomb detonates in the questioner's eye, resetting time by 1 hour. This is the best ability to grant a serial killer like Yoshikage Kira, and it manifested when Kira was backed in a corner and his identity was bound to come crashing down on him. Bites the Dust is the ultimate weapon that targets the community. Not only is Kira uncatchable to the police, he is now uncatchable by Josuke and everyone else. The only person that can change things is the victim of Bites the Dust, which in the part was just a kid. Overall, he's just a good guy, and it sucks guys like him are uncommon in the average neighborhood. Yoshihiro Kira. He serves to protect his son no matter what. Kira's father is aware of what his son is, but is still devoted to protecting him. It should also be noted that the stand arrow is in Morio thanks to him, so he pretty much enabled Kira to become the person he is. His stand, Adam Hart father, basically just allows him to live on as a ghost through an old Polaroid photo. This would naturally suggest his nature as being a protective father, since he only lives to protect Yoshikage and enable his crimes. Yoshihiro uses his stand to steal the arrow and make more stand users to delay the group from finding Kira's new identity. To me, Yoshihiro Kira embodies like the parents of like serial killers who like sit there and go like, there were no signs of my child going to turn up like this. He only dismantled like 2 dogs in the backyard once or twice, but you know, kids will be kids. Akira Otoshi. Basically the main antagonist of the first half of Part 4, Akira embodies the greed of Shigekiyo and the apathy of Tamami, as he desires to be a famous rock musician at any cost. This is why his stand, Red Hot Chili Pepper, is electricity based, because he carries an electric guitar and loves to rock. He kills Okuyasu's brother with no remorse and views people as just an audience for his music, nothing more. His stand feeds off of electricity to fuel his own selfish desires, and the more electricity he has, the more powerful he becomes. Tying him into the community theme, he is basically a representation of the neighbor mowing his lawn at 6 in the morning, just because he can, and everyone else has to deal with it. It's not his problem, it's your problem. Teranosuke. Teranosuke is kind of like a Reddit mod. He stews by himself and is obsessed with dark psychology, observing people in order to study their fear responses.
What?
His stand, Enigma, reflects this obsession. And if he observes and catches your fear response, he can capture you in paper, and you're at his mercy at that point. You know the type. I'm playing chess while everyone's playing checkers type of shit. To be fair, bro is just a teenager, but an edgy teenager, with the power to abduct people without a trace. Josuke would have never found the guy without Yuya Fungami in the first place. As a community motive, imagine the neighbor's kid, and that would be this guy, and his stand, Enigma.
Yo, Angelo.
Yo, Angelo.
Yo, Angelo!
Angelo is the very first menace introduced to set the tone for Part 4. Angelo is basically a jack of all trades for crimes. He's done it all. Murder, rape, torture, robbery, animal cruelty, mass murder, he's done it all. As Angelo was set to be executed, he is shot by Keicho's stand arrow, granting him Aqua Necklace. Not to mention, Angelo was originally operating within Morio, because he had history with Josuke's grandfather. The stand Aqua Necklace reflects who Angelo is at his core. He slips into people's homes, and has no problems whatsoever slipping deeper into people, if you know what I mean. Aqua Necklace is also a long-distance remote-controlled stand, reflecting his cowardly side as he no longer has to do the intimate killing with his own hands. To sum it up, this guy walked so Chocolata could run in Part 5. Community-wise, this is the guy that keeps the rent low in the community, or at the very least, the subject of a ghost tour. Although, a community is not relegated to just humans, as it is relevant to animals as well. Animals obviously play a different rule set to humans, but they can still play similar roles in their ecosystems as humans do in their communities. Sniper Rat. I'm sorry, it is actually Sniper Rats. Nearly took out the time-stopping Jotaro alone, which is crazy when you think about it. These rats were shot by Chili Pepper, and became stand users. One was killed early on by Josuke, but the other is the one every JoJo fan knows. Rat with 2 T's or bug eaten. The stand Rat is a turret machine gun-esque stand that fires toxic darts. The rats were introduced as being basically an invasive species, in which they melted a family of elderly farmers and stuck them in a fridge, alongside other animals and rival rats with the same method, causing significant harm to Morio if they were allowed to live for much longer. Tama and Stray Cat. Commensalism is when, between parties, one benefits while the other is neutral. This relationship I find describes Tama, the stray cat, stand user, and Kira. The cat is just a cat, and it operates on cat instincts. It was killed accidentally by Miss Kawajiri, Shinobu, but it lived on as a cat-plant hybrid. Even though the cat did die, yes, but it did not change anything because the cat lived on within the plant, like it was nothing, and he also gained the ability to manipulate air. Yoshikage Kira finds a workaround and uses the cat to benefit his stand, Killer Queen, basically making delayed bombs and launching it at enemies. The cat is strictly a neutral force. Nothing changes with the cat plant. It is merely being used as a tool by Kira for his benefit. There is an argument to be had that it is also symbiosis as well, since the cat doesn't care for humans and it is being wielded effectively to turn people to past tense really quick. Cats are in almost any community or city, and Tama with Stray Cat is literally just a cat that can spit air bubbles. Obviously because he's a plant now, which is a lot more deadly than it sounds. Masaso Kinoto. This is honestly one of the worst stands you could have gone in the entirety of JoJo's. At least Notorious Big triggers after death, meaning it doesn't negatively harm you living your life. Although Cheap Trick awakens within the architect, Masaso Kinoto, after being shot by Kira's father. Cheap Trick makes the user conscious over their backs, and if anyone sees your back, you get your back violently ripped out and die. Then whoever saw your back is the new user. It's basically like a game of Old Maid. This is the definition of a parasitic stand, and a rough stand to be awakened with. It's literally like those superpower posts where you get superpowers, but you have stage 4 cancer as a trade-off. Cheap Trick is just a trial or tribulation for the community you surround yourself with. If they want to see why you have your back against the wall all the time, you're basically already dead.
Desperately. You're my favorite parasite. No. Ringworm's my favorite parasite. You're my second favorite parasite.
Very funny.
I lied. Ringworm, then rats with the plague, then you.
Shut up.
Lastly, communities often have their fair share of oddballs, or legends. These are individuals who are not too involved but are notorious within a community for specific reasons. Whether it be cautionary tales, myths/rumors, or even someone with a strange appearance. All these characters embody a unique aspect of a community, and they are certainly within Morio. Migitaka. literally an alien from outer space. Or so it seems. He was shot, in quotation marks, by Kira's dad in order to turn him into a stand user, but it fails, kind of. The arrow literally bounces off of his neck. It's actually because of this scenario that it is debated whether he is an alien or not. For one, we know the arrow originates from a meteor from outer space, and maybe his alien blood rejected said extraterrestrial object. He does get a tiny scratch from the arrow, leaving him unconscious for half the day, meaning it's speculated that this is the thing that awakened his ability to shapeshift. Regardless though, whatever he is, not even Josuke nor Kira's dad knows. The fact is that he uses earth, wind, and fire in order to shapeshift into anything. You can interpret this as literally anybody, no matter how strange, being able to fit into society or a community, where he literally changes himself to cater to Josuke's needs. He can be anything.
Perfect! The dice he found are actually the alien! I managed to sneak them into his house when he wasn't paying attention! I'm such a bad boy. It won't be a ton, but you're about to fund my summer vacay, Rohan-sensei!
I'm personally a proponent of him being an alien. One of my favorite episodes of the show was his introduction to Josuke and Okuyasu. No matter what he is, I think he's the GOAT. I love him.
I estimate I've been unconscious for nearly 13 Earth hours.
That's a good one, man! You really had us going there! If this whole alien thing doesn't work out, you could totally become a comedian! You're hilarious!
The Invisible Baby, Shizuka Joestar, got her stand from just being born, and it is exactly what it is. She makes herself and surrounding objects invisible depending on her stress levels, which for a baby you can imagine could be any time, or triggered by anything. Shizuka's stand is officially named Actung Baby, and her biological parents are nowhere to be found, maybe because they're invisible, but who knows. She is adopted by Joseph Joestar and even helps Rohan defeat the Janken boy later in the series. Shizuka is definitely a unique kid. One more legend for the community of Morio. Also, off topic, hopefully one of these days we could get an official Shizuka Joestar spin-off series, since that'd be pretty interesting to explore. Montaku Nijimura. This is the father of the Nijimura brothers, and he was a servant of Dio during Part 3. Particularly, he was Dio's financial advisor or something like that. But Dio had implanted a flesh bud in his head. Montaku worked with Dio because money was hard to come by, especially with his wife passing away. This flesh bud, however, made him more abusive and angry at the house. Montaku was not always abusive, but with the flesh bud corroding him, it just became who he was. Eventually, of course, Dio died in Part 3, and that's when Montaku mutated to what he is today. It is also unclear if Montaku had a stand. It is possible, but is never named or mentioned since he is basically nonverbal. Montaku is a tragic figure, who unwittingly became a bane of his kids' lives as a result of working with Dio. To some, his appearance reflects his abusive nature from his time with the flesh buds, or it's a tragic representation of working with evil, even for noble reasons. And unfortunately, the memories of pre-flesh bud Montaku was overtaken by the post-flesh bud Montaku. Toyohiro Kanadaichi. Kanadaichi possesses the stand Superfly, making it impossible for him to leave an abandoned electrical pylon. The pylon is indestructible as well, but you can only leave the pylon if you trade places with someone else, so another game of Old Maid. Community-wise, this is the unemployed guy, or just introverts. But seriously, he did grow tired of being cooped up, which is why he worked with Kira's father, but ultimately with how things ended with Josuke, he realizes he is fearful of the outside world and would much rather remain at the pylon. Superfly and its user represent people staying in their shell, choosing isolation over society. Though by the end of Part 4, he does seem to chill with Migitaka here and there, showing he is not completely alone. Ken Oyanagi. Janken, basically just rock, paper, scissors, is an obsession by Ken Oyanagi after receiving his stand, Boy to Man. Boy to Man has the power to steal people's stands, but the catch is he has to win 3 out of 5 rock, paper, scissors matches with the said opponent. Each win he gets, he steals 1/3 of the opponent's stand. And the purpose is spelled out, and it is Ken's inner desire to prove himself. He does this by desperately trying to challenge a successful, intelligent opponent like Rohan Kishibe. Boy to Man would give him validation that he is superior and he surpassed his opponent. He is so desperate, and when he loses to Rohan officially, he attempts suicide, but is, by good fortune, saved by Rohan Kishibe. This act by Rohan cemented the truth into Ken that he lost fair and square. Ken also has a giant hole in his head, as that is how he sucks out the stands for every victory he gets, giving him that unique appearance. Community-wise, his appearance and desperation to prove himself stand out, which there is overachievers in any community, just people trying to prove themselves. Ken gets a happy ending, and he vows to never use Boy to Man to harm people again. Basically just a kid trying to prove himself to the world. And that concludes my findings for part 4. And as I said in the intro, this video was supposed to include parts 4 through 6, but as I was writing my guide, I realized just how big of a video it would truly be to cover all 3. So this is just part 4 for now, and I'd love to continue it on for parts 5 and 6. My Diavolo figure also came in, I'm pretty happy about that. Steel Ball Run Volume 8 also released for English just now, which means we're exactly 2 months away from Volume 9 and a new episode of the anime coming out. And also I'm starting to passively collect Fist of the North Star, which is also cool. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and please have a good one.
136,000 yen? My hard-earned money! It's all gone! You gray-haired dude!